There are 20 lines in the Odyssey devoted to a dog, and they have outlasted empires. Odysseus comes home after 20 years, disguised as a beggar so that no one will recognize him. His wife doesn't know him. His own son doesn't know him. The servants who raised him from childhood look straight through him. The only living creature in the whole poem who sees past the disguise is a dying hound, lying in a heap of manure by the gate, too weak to stand, who lifts his head, manages one final wag of the tail, and dies. It's one of the most quietly devastating moments in Western literature, and it's been read that way for almost 3,000 years. But it leaves behind an odd historical problem. Everyone wants to know what Argos actually looked like. A recent film adaptation answered that by casting a Portuguese Podengo in the role. And the choice is worth taking seriously because it isn't really an answer at all. It's a substitution. The filmmakers weren't identifying Homer's dog, they were borrowing the closest living thing to him, which means the real work is finding a breed that no longer exists. Pedigree breeds, in the sense of closed registries and written standards, are a 19th century invention. Bronze Age and early Greek dog keeping didn't work that way. A dog was bred for what it could do: stamina on rocky ground, a nose that could hold a scent for hours, the courage to close on a boar, almost never for how it looked. Homer wasn't being vague when he failed to name Argos's breed. There was no name to give, only types, working categories shaped by function, overlapping and interbreeding freely. Hunting sat close to the center of Greek life. It fed households, protected crops and flocks, and doubled as training for war. Young aristocratic men learned patience, endurance, and nerve-chasing hare, deer, fox, and at the most dangerous end, wild boar. None of that happened without dogs. Greek hunting relied on several distinct working types rather than one all-purpose animal. Dogs that worked by scent over rough terrain, dogs that worked by sight running down game in the open, and heavier dogs that held wild boar at bay long enough for a hunter to close in with a spear. Homer gives us almost nothing beyond calling Argos an accomplished hunter, which is itself a clue. It suggests a generalist rather than a specialist, a dog capable of working more than one of these roles. If any historical dog comes close to what Homer had in mind, it's probably the Laconian Hound, a breed that no longer exists in any form. It came out of Laconia, the region built around Sparta, and was famous across the Greek world for its nose, speed, and stamina. Xenophon rated Laconian hounds among the very best dogs available in Synergeticus, and went further. He described distinct strains within the breed, which tells us Greek hunters were already practicing deliberate, selective breeding long before anyone wrote it down as a system. From what survives in Greek pottery and scattered literary description, the Laconian looks to have been lean and long-legged, built for endurance rather than raw power. A scent hound suited to Greece's dry, rocky hillsides. It didn't survive. Centuries of crossbreeding and shifting hunting practices eventually absorbed it into other regional types. And no true Laconian bloodline exists today. Of every dog we can name from the ancient Greek world, it's the Laconian that Argos most plausibly resembled. Which brings us back to the Podengo, a breed with no genealogical connection to Greece, but a strong claim to the same kind of dog. The Portuguese Podengo isn't really one breed so much as a family of them, unified by an old primitive hunting style built on sight, scent, and hearing working together rather than any single sense dominating. It traditionally comes in 3 sizes, from the rabbit hunting pequeño at 4 to 6 kilograms up to the grande at 20 to 30 kilograms, historically used against deer and even boar. Each size its own tool rather than a scaled copy of the others. The lineage runs deep. Most historians trace the Podengo's ancestors to dogs brought into the Iberian Peninsula by Phoenician traders during the first millennium BC, with Roman and medieval influence layered on top later, making it one of the oldest continuously working hunting dogs in Europe. Shaped by Portugal's harsh terrain into something independent, agile, and frankly, a little difficult. because those were the traits that kept it useful. Crucially, it never went through the Victorian-era standardization that reshaped so many other breeds into show-ring specialists. It still looks more or less like the landrace dog it descended from. Erect ears, a lean frame, a deep chest, an alert, slightly wary expression. The same silhouette found on Greek pottery depicting hunting dogs from 2,500 years ago. That resemblance is almost certainly why a casting director reached for it. It reads as ancient on screen, even though it has no historical claim to Greece whatsoever. It's also rarer than people assume. The Medio, and especially the Grande, remain uncommon even in Portugal, which makes the casting choice more interesting. Instead of a familiar modern breed, like a Labrador or a Pointer, the filmmakers went looking for an obscure, primitive-looking dog whose visual authenticity outweighed historical accuracy. Our best window into how Greek hunters thought about their dogs comes from Xenophon's Cynegeticus, written well after Homer but drawing on the same living tradition. He covers choosing a puppy, training a hound, reading its behavior in the field, organizing a hunt around several dogs working together. And what comes through is that Greek hunters rated intelligence, discipline, and cooperation just as highly as raw speed or strength. Read next to Xenophon, Argos stops looking like a poetic flourish and starts looking like a specific, recognizable type of animal. Not a pet, but a working partner who spent years hunting at Odysseus' side before old age caught up with him. That context is what makes the recognition scene work as devastatingly as it does. Almost no one in the Odyssey sees through Odysseus' disguise. The suitors don't. The household servants don't. Even the people who loved him most hesitate. The one character who knows him instantly is an old hunting dog who has lost every physical quality that once made him valuable. His speed, his strength, his body all failing under him in the dirt. None of that matters, because the thing that actually identified his master was never his legs or his lungs. It was memory, and the bond built over years of working together, and that part of him hadn't degraded at all. Honestly, we can't know, and that's the actual answer rather than an evasion. He was almost certainly not a Portuguese Podengo, and Homer wasn't describing any modern breed, because none existed yet in the form we'd recognize. He was very likely one of the generalist hunting types that filled the Greek world at the time, quite possibly resembling the Laconian Hound, or one of several regional types that have since vanished, leaving nothing behind but a few lines of description and some pottery. The Podengo isn't a reconstruction of that dog. It's a visual analogue, an old athletic Mediterranean hunting breed that happens to look the part. The filmmakers didn't recreate Argos's breed. They couldn't have. What they recreated, and what they got right, was his world.